Some people say the food pyramid came from Sweden or something like that. Is that correct?
No, the U.S. ties, based on corrupt incentives pushed on by industry, ties their guidelines, and they force Europe and any country we do deals with on science to adhere to their standards. We drive everything.
Is there something to be said? Again, we're going to bounce all over the place here, so you got to entertain me with this. That the carbohydrates in Europe are different than here. For example, so many times people say, I traveled to Italy, I can have the pasta, I feel fine afterwards. Is there any merit to that argument?
There's a lot of merit. So fundamentally, there's two levels here. The first is that ultra-processed food is weaponized for us to eat more, so calorie consumption's gone way up because this food hijacks our biology very purposefully and makes us want to eat more when you can't really overeat steak. So we're eating more. The second thing, a byproduct of food companies, it makes sense, wants to make food cheaper and more addictive. We've gone to industrial farming and really through corruption have blown past a lot of the standards any other country has. So we spray our crops with glyphosate. This is a huge, huge problem. This is being totally phased out of Europe and the rest of the world. And these ultra-processed grains that are sprayed with chemicals that are known neurotoxins, that are then processed in a way that takes the fiber off, so they're basically just hidden sugar. By the time it gets into our bodies through this packaged food, it's indistinguishable. And, in France, I don't want to give France any credit whatsoever, but they have real standards around their food. And their crops are not sprayed with these toxic chemicals. So I think you're going to continue to see our grains and the stuff we spread on them. It's doing terrible things to our cells just because it's hidden sugar, but it's also disrupting our microbiome, which is something we should be really paying attention to.
No, our guts are destroyed right now, and we're not getting the prebiotics or the probiotics necessary to culture the billions of dollars billions of healthy bacteria needed in our stomach. So let me just pause. So we spray with glyphosate here in America still. Which is a pesticide?
It's a pesticide, and as Casey talked about this so eloquently, Tucker, it's a pesticide that comes largely from China, and it's actually being phased out of Chinese food. It's being phased out of Europe food.
Why do we do that? What is their argument? If you had a pro-glyphosate guy here, what would he say?
They would say that it is absolutely existential that food is as cheap as possible. And what the food industry does is, after World War II, we had to feed the world, and we invented processed food. We invented ways to make cheap grains, make it shelf-stable, and ship it all over the world. And we moved from a regenerative situation where food was born together. You didn't need pesticides because it was natural. The animals provided natural pesticides to where we have long rows of crops.
Yes.
What's happened
is a soil issue.
They've taken this, I think, good intentions from post-World War II to make food as cheap as possible. And actually, there's its unintended consequence where our soil is now, they say it has 40 seasons left. It's being totally depleted. A tomato, organic in America today, has 70% less nutrients than it did 50 years ago. So our food is being, because we're not growing it naturally, as they do, frankly, in Europe, it's being depleted of nutrients. And because we have them all lined up so that they can be cropped efficiently, we have to spray them with these herbicides, which literally is, to kill what's on it, and that goes into our guts. So this is not the free market. The agencies co-opting the government to have no oversight of this and have our kids' microbiomes absolutely out of control is not the free market. That's my big point. It's actually government capture.
For sure. And so we have 30 seconds in this segment. Just how does Europe then grow their food?
Yeah, I mean, the foundational premise we talk about in the book is that we really should be looking at what people ate 10,000 years ago, what we're evolutionarily made to eat, and eat that. Fundamentally, if you're raising grains the way they have been normally made, without a ton of pesticides on them, that's a good thing. In Europe, the meat is generally grass-fed and how it's been used to grow, not in a factory. The grains are not poisoned.
Hold that thought really quick.
Yeah.
Calley Means continues after the break. Radio coming back. Okay, Calley Means continues with us. So Calley, then the pro-glyphosate crew would say cost. You want to finish that other thought?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So how much more expensive would it be to do non-pesticide, non-glyphosate mass farming at industrial scale that would then give us more nutrients and also allow the soil to naturally regenerate? Because that's the problem, right? You have to cycle. Is that correct? You have to allow, if you don't do pesticides and kill all of the worms and all of the I have a very layman understanding here. I'm not an expert. How much more expensive would a celery be than what it is now.
So I want to back up from the cost, and this is what RFK and President Trump's
Sure.
talking about more. We are going to go, the American experiment will end. The chief reason is because we've got fat, sick, depressed, infertile because of our food, okay? And that is leading to astronomical healthcare costs. So if you look at the graph, we're spending per capita 2 to 3 times more than European
sure.
countries on healthcare costs. So any person that came down to see what's happening to American civilization would say we're poisoning ourselves just foundationally. And this is not political, right? We are poisoning ourselves. We are feeding kids processed, toxic crap, and that is leading to trillions of dollars of downstream health impacts. So interestingly, again, I hate to give Europe credit, but Europe, they have a 2 times per capita lower healthcare cost, but spend a little bit more on food. So I would urge everyone to see our regenerative farming budget as part of our healthcare budget. If we're going to have the money, we should fund it. It's nothing short of a moral blind spot.
I'm right there
that
with
we
you.
don't see these things connected.
So how much more expensive? 10%, 15%, 20%?
Well, you'd have to have a shift over, but actually regenerative farming now produces higher crop output
Higher
per acre.
yield?
Yeah, higher yield.
Yeah.
Higher yield
So
per acre.
let me tell you the other part that makes this difficult. The farmers don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk to farmers. They say we're never going back to regenerative. Pesticides are the best thing ever,
Yeah. So
and they have a lot of power in this country.
So I think and I think if you talk to farmers, a lot of them are behind what's happening with Robert Kennedy and President Trump. I actually think if you push farmers on other angles, they're not too happy with the USDA agriculture incentives. I think farmers do have to play by the incentives, but right now we subsidize ultra-processed food ingredients, corn, soy, wheat, these core kind of ultra-processed food crops with 95% of agriculture subsidies. We've totally rigged the market. So they are filtered, and the only way they can make money is through this industrial monocropping with ultra-processed food ingredients. I don't think small farmers are very happy right now. I think it's all moving to the big guys, and that's actually putting us at threat. I think it's putting our food system at threat, being super consolidated right now. I don't think individual farmers are that happy with USDA agriculture subsidies and incentives. So
I'm just saying they tend to push back against this idea of regenerative farming.
Listen, I know farmers are going to make the right decision. This is what we're talking. This is what President Trump's talking about. This is what Robert Kennedy is. Let's go one step back. We are incentivizing the wrong thing. Like, let's just change the incentives.
No, of course.
Let's just change the incentives. So I have a strong belief. We have a ton of billions of dollars of incentives that create and incentivize our ultra-processed food system. If that follows the science, and just even taking those incentives away, we'd be at I trust farmers to make the right decision, but we incentivize them to use these toxic chemicals. I'm not saying we should ban them. I at the very first step, I think the USDA and the NIH should say what scientifically these chemicals do. My point, and this is something RFK is talking a lot about, no command and control regulation. I want the science to be clear. Let's just at least be on the same page about what glyphosate is doing. Then the public policy chips can fall where they may. I do think if you get into President Trump can obviously speak for himself, but give it into what I would recommend, the first year should be about the truth. It should not be about any taxes, any ban, get that off the table. But the USDA should be saying, like they're doing in Europe and around the world, what these Chinese chemicals that we're subsidizing and spraying on food, what they're doing. We should all just be on the same page. And we have a similar thing to where we happen with COVID, where we're just not getting the correct information because these industries that make and profit from this system have bought the institutions off. They've bought the science off. So what to do? I don't know. Get the truth out and stop change the incentives that are incentivizing this industrial monocropping. And work with farmers to get back to a free market.